You don't know what God's will is for your life, do you? Christians at large talk to great lengths about chasing after God's will for their life, or debating at least how it differs from each other. Is God's will for my life to move to this location? Is His will for me to marry that person? Is God's will for my life to take this job offer? What about my sports team? Is He rooting for us or for them? See, if that last question sounded sillier than the others, let me ask you why? Why does it sound silly to ask, does God want my sports team to win? Yet somehow it sounds normal to believe He cares about the job offer you have received. Ultimately, God does not care about any of those things. What most Christians fail to understand and hate to hear is that God's will for your life is you. Let me explain. To understand His will, it would help to first understand His love. Though love in general has never been well understood in the Western Hemisphere, the Greeks had identified four core types of love: agape, eros, philia, and storge. And the ancient Judaic culture had penned three levels of love: raya, ahava, and dod. Meanwhile, the kid next to me at the restaurant exclaims that he loves his chicken nuggets. Humanity has clearly failed to continually pass down these understandings to the next generation. Over time, we haven't merely watered down the word, we've decimated and practically eradicated the ancient views on one of the most profound and universal human experiences. Naturally, we find ourselves lacking a standard of love to which we can appeal, let alone any insight as to what it means for God to love us. Another thing we are not fond of today is uncertainty, cluelessness, mystery. We have devalued the process between asking a question and receiving an answer. Thanks, ChatGPT. So in our haste to avoid the realization that we don't have a clue what love means, we may jump to an explanation as soon as possible. Plenty of people may go to such descriptors like omnipotent, aka all-powerful, and state flippantly Romans 8:28 that His love works all things for good. The problem at this point is that we are now subconsciously internalizing this scripture to say His love doesn't just work, but controls with His omnipotence all things for good. But go and study those ancient words that we mentioned before, and you'll find that in some regard, there is a sense of belonging to someone, but not in a way where they have ownership or control over you. Love lets go. Not only is the action of controlling others fundamentally antithetical to any form of love, but God is at rest. He is doing nothing but loving us. Staying in the theme of not understanding ancient concepts, we can find more ways that God has been and should continue to be seen as at rest. Even in the Genesis creation narrative, you have 7 days of creation that align with the 7 days of the week. So in that sequence, what was God doing or creating on the seventh day? Nothing. What about the first day of next week? Did He start back up doing more things? What more was there to do but simply be in union with His creation? Now, as I stated before, this is a narrative. Scholastically speaking, it is not to be taken as a factual historical account. As Marty Solomon breaks down in the Bema podcast, this is what's known as a chiasm, a literary work meant to mirror itself for the sake of bringing one's attention to the center of the paralleled ideas, or to the idea that is an outlier to the rest, like that of day 7 when God rested. But wait, doesn't Jesus' very life and ministry on earth seem to contradict my own argument? As Jesus was doing things on earth before He was crucified, right? In other words, if God was done doing things as I put forth, then how do I explain Jesus, who is God, literally doing things on earth? Obviously, Jesus did things. Therefore, God was doing things. Therefore, God still does things today. Therefore, God has a will for my life. That may be a neat way of maintaining that position. However, God is not linear in the way that we experience reality and the way that I just laid that out. And what Jesus did wasn't just for humanity, but was the birth of humanity. As Hebrews 10:12 says, "But this man, after He had offered one sacrifice for sins forever, sat down at the right hand of God." Jesus' ministry, death, and resurrection was the beginning of a new humanity, but it also affected those before him. Therefore, all are now a part of this new humanity, Old Testament and New. Imagine it like this: God is a really good dad. As such, he goes into the open backyard that backs up to the stream and he starts creating. He builds a sand pit underneath the monkey bars that he installs to the tree house he just put up. He secures a slide to the tree house that leads into the stream with the water hose fastened up top flowing down the slide. He creates a cool bridge across the stream so you can watch the trout and enjoy the tire swing on the other side. You get in the picture? There are so many endless cool things that this good father puts in place for the sake of endless fun and exploring. As you grow up, you are realizing there are consequences to your actions and how every cause has its effect. So you begin to look for guidance. What you notice later is that guidance doesn't simply give you the opinion or knowledge of someone wiser, but it also gives you a fall guy, someone to scapegoat the consequences of your actions onto because you were simply following directions. The worst of it is that we do this to God every time we ask what He wants or what His will is for our life. We are begging to scapegoat God as if it wasn't enough the first time on the cross. For the mature son and daughter, the one not seen in the prodigal son story, you may look at God and ask this question, but what you hear back is, "Well, what do you want to do, my love?" God created a very good environment for us and wants, like all good parents, to simply enjoy us in it. The Father has what He wants. Now it's your turn.